right. Welcome back to Stress Reduce Fat Loss Podcast. I'm here with a very, 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 very important guest, Jason Persaud. What's going on, man?
What's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm great. I'm happy to have you here. I think we've known each other for a little bit.
I'd say a decade,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah,
about a decade.
Yeah. And we come from like kind of similar lineage. It's just almost like when you
Totally.
look at tribes and like whatever, we're coming
Yeah.
from that
Mm-hmm.
Polican, Polchek kind of background.
Totally. Yeah, we were very similar in that. I think it was Biosig was the first course where I met you back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paula Quinn told me I had no calves.
Falcon told us all things. Like we were talking about this before.
Yeah.
Working out to get ready
Yeah.
for the biosignature because you're
Totally.
standing there in your underwear in front of 50 people, like
You go to like hypertrophy camp and you're like doing like 3 months of training just before you show up for the hypertrophy camp,
Right,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah, always.
I think you have to be a little bit to kind of like do that stuff and be a part of it. But
I would agree.
I think it also set us apart in a different way and set us on a path that
Yeah.
either we were meant to go, but
Mhm.
I know it kind of projected me in a way that helped me be ahead of a lot of where people were.
100%. And I would say, that Paula Quinn was one of the first like international coaching programs I was really taking and meeting coaches from all over the world. And
Yeah.
like that transitioned me to like Paul Check because you're meeting the best of the best in all the categories.
Yeah.
And leading into what I do now, I made a lot of international friends through like Paula Quinn and Paul Check that got me here. So
Mhm.
like it was the path.
Because you went all the way. Did you do the level 3 with Paul Check?
Yeah. I went I did all the HLC 1, 2, 3. Paul Check, I did exercise coach 1, 2, 3. Paula Quinn, I got up to PICP level 4. So yeah, I went like in it.
Done it all.
Yeah.
So you're like, I always say like, he's like, in some ways, me 2.0. He was like 20 years ahead of where I was when I started, right? So
Yeah, I basically did all that and I threw in like natural medicine on top of it,
there
basically.
you go.
Yeah.
We got a great one today for all you listeners. We're going to be going through some great stuff today. Heavy metals
Yes.
and parasites. We're going to be
Mhm,
talking about
mhm.
that, especially as this is our podcast is a big springboard, obviously, for our transformation mentorship.
Right.
And letting our students know the latest and the greatest things they should be doing. I thought,
Yeah.
who else better to come on and to inject that in so they can start understanding these are things they should be doing.
Yeah.
This isn't new. This
No.
is like old shit.
No.
I said, but it's stuff
Really.
that they should be doing and understanding at least
Yeah.
when they're working with clients.
Totally.
So
I would agree.
let's just, before we dive into that, let's talk a little bit about, okay, we talked about the Polk and stuff, but let's get into really some of your background because you have a very deep bucket of knowledge.
Yeah.
You need, like having seen you myself as a client,
Yeah.
having my son seen you as a client, my
Yeah.
mom seen you as a client,
Yeah, totally.
and then a lot of our clients, he said, whenever I'm like, fuck, I don't want to deal with that.
I'm stuck. Go see Jay.
Yeah, this is too cellular for me.
Yeah.
Go see him,
Yeah, I hear you.
so let's talk about your some of your background.
So I mean, it kind of started as like Paula Quinn, strength and conditioning, Paul Check.
Mhm.
Shortly after that, I moved into like the good life realm. So fascial stretch therapy kind of came up there. After working with enough chronic pain clients and realizing, this was like a decade ago. What did chiros and physios do a decade ago? Oh, you're injured, you can't work out.
Mhm.
Oh, it made no sense to me. I'm like, how does this make any sense? So I learned something called neurosomatic therapy. That's where I helped your mom, your son a little bit.
That's where you helped me scream a little bit.
Definitely helped you scream.
He said my mom was tougher than I was, and she is. Mom, if you're listening,
Grandmas,
you are tougher.
they're tough, man. Moms are tough. They can handle it. Yeah, she didn't make a peep.
These hands, I just want you to say, these freaking fingers have put more, like they have electricity in them. I remember he was getting into points, and I was like, what? Is he have metal fingers?
If we get into like the energetics, I do have a lot of energy in my fingers,
Like I've been in a Shaolin temple and they worked on me, and that was probably the most that I've ever felt.
I got buzz in my fingers, that's
You
for
do.
sure. So I working with like chronic pain, I always had this curiosity, and to be honest, it came from my grandmother, my mom's mom. She got my family here from a third world country.
Right.
And like the medical system, like just kind of slowly aged and passed.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's a big driver for why I do what I do and why I don't like to see people in pain, especially because I have the knowledge to like help them be out of pain.
Yeah.
And so that's what was a big driver of neurosomatic, which is basically just like osteopathy and massage therapy kind of mixed together, you know?
Right.
And when you pair that with your strength and conditioning background, now you're looking at biomechanics from a training background and from a therapy background. You have a very different perspective.
Because you always talk to, remember, a lot of people talk about fascia, like my business partner, James Monroe. He's always from the fascial side. He has FSC as well.
Yeah.
But then being able to talk about it from the muscular, the neuroconnect, everything, putting it together, you just see the body in different layers.
You see all the layers, right? Yeah. So it was at that point when I was doing neurosomatic, and there were still some clients that couldn't get better. So I was like, what is the bridge between the muscular system and like the nervous system? Like, well, why is it that the same treatment can help some people and couldn't help other people?
Right.
Well, at that point, I stumbled across Perry Nicholson, right? Perry Nicholson has stopped chasing pain, and he's big on lymph. And I started to put the pieces together that fascia is made of water. We know this. Fascia is technically part of the extracellular matrix. It's the spaces in between. It holds everything together. It's the connective tissue. Well, what intertwines the connective tissue? Nerves, blood, vessels, and lymph, right? So I started doing lymph resets on people, and he talked about how lymph was directly related to the liver and the gut, and I started putting all the pieces together. And
the lymphatic system is kind of like your trash highway. It's kind of like,
basically, it's like your sewage system, right? Like all your organs dump garbage into the lymphatic system, and the lymphatic system drains through the liver and the gallbladder. So when people have lymph issues and they're constantly doing like lymph resets and moving their lymph, if the way out is clogged, liver, gallbladder, which it often is, then you're going to consistently have lymph problems. The other part of that is endo and exotoxin load. Endo would be like inside toxins, so like parasites, mold, candida, and then exo, one of which we're going to talk about today, heavy metals and chemical residues. So I started doing lymph resets on people and noticed that like, oh my gosh, their pain would go away. So that's when you started to see their pain was not biomechanical, it was actually systemic. And then that bridged into, and then I went down my own rabbit hole of bioenergetic medicine because of my own IBS and depression issues. I found that this was now by the time I'm like 23, 24. So working with chronic pain, I'm going through my own health stuff. I'm like trying to figure that out. This is like the rebound effect of being a bodybuilder and pushing my body too far that direction, paired with like all the emotional trauma stuff that we all go through. And so I went down the rabbit hole of bioenergetic medicine, tying in like naturopathy.
And talk about bioenergetic medicine. I know that's, we're as a joke we were saying before, again, you've had more superhero names. It was like quantum.
It was quantum health. It was quantum health in like that at the beginning of bioenergetic medicine. And quantum health was when I started studying at Quantum University. And I was basically tying in the idea of homeopathy with naturopathy with like what we call the mental body. Mental bodies like Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, the idea that our health is beyond just like remedies or supplements and diet and exercise, you know? And the reason that I had to go beyond that was because my main clientele were already doing that and not succeeding. That was the main reason, you know, like there's a lot of people who see success with that. Unfortunately, more and more and more now, we don't see success by doing those things for all the reasons. Our food's not good enough, our food is poison, blah, blah. We can go down that rabbit hole forever.
That's the next time you're back.
Right? So, you know, I needed another form of like medicine per se to like start to help my clients. So now it's quantum medicine or quantum health. And so it just gave this, it basically was a sign per se for people that knew that there was something beyond the everyday that they were already doing. And people who had the inkling that there was something more to health than just like supplements and diet came my way. And on a sheer business standpoint, I came to learn that quantum health has actually been trademarked in the United States for 20 years. My vision is growing the company where it works, where I'm Canadian and American. And so I wanted to make sure that my business name didn't interfere with that in any way. And so this was 2021, I started looking for a new business name. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, what do we do? I'm like I wake people up. That's what I do. I wake people up. We're like a lot of people who are sick or unwell or like, you know, new on their journey are asleep at the wheel to a degree in relation to their physical body. Right? They're like on autopilot to a degree. And so I'm like, I just wake people up. I wake up a version of themselves that they have not met before or have forgotten. Right? And so I was like, okay, to wake in Latin. excito popped up.
I like that, I like that.
So excito means to wake in Latin or to excite in Spanish. And I was like, oh, excito life, like living an awakened life.
All right.
That's my business.
That's where you are.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to get back into that and talk
Okay.
a little bit deeper about,
Yeah.
how people can find you and get
Yeah.
some good work with you. Because
Cool.
if you're running into certain things, it may be a good pathway to go to.
Yeah, totally.
Like I said, I would say anywhere I send my family
Mhm.
is somewhere that I believe in. So,
Totally. Fair enough.
You know
I
how I feel
appreciate
about
that. Yeah.
so let's dive into now discussing heavy metals.
Yeah.
We hear this getting thrown around a lot. We've
Mhm.
heard about it. Well, what are heavy metals? Let's just talk about that. Let's give some examples. What's
What are heavy metals? Arsenic, lead, cadmium, mercury, beryllium, bismuth. Like there's probably like 20 or 30 heavy metals out there. There's definitely ones that are bad, like arsenic and mercury. And then there's other heavy metals that we have in our body, like chromium and zinc. And if they're in high amounts, they can also cause issues.
Or different forms, right?
Or different
like
forms.
Like a hexanic chromium, right?
Exactly, right? So the thing with heavy metals is like, yes, we should have some of them in our body because we are organic material.
Right.
But then because of our world, commercial world, corporate world, manufacturing world, there are all these heavy metals in a bunch of products, right?
Yeah.
Where do they come from? They're like, unfortunately, in today's world, you eat food, you drink water, you're gonna get them.
Yep.
Naturally, you put them on your skin in lotions.
That's right.
Like
the cosmetics.
Yeah, they're in makeup, lotion, shampoos, dyes. Like they are everywhere. And so you can't really avoid them per se. And
Right.
I don't like, it's a topic of conversation that we're gonna have today, heavy metals. But the last thing I want to do is scare people into like, what do I do? Like, they're everywhere. How do I avoid them?
Yeah.
You actually can't avoid anything on this
can't,
planet.
no,
So when clients ask me, when I'm testing them and we see them, like they're like, oh, where did I get it? I'm like, you live on the planet Earth.
Yeah.
You live on the planet Earth.
Can't run away
It's
from
naturally something that happens, right? Like, yes, big fish is full of mercury, right? Mercury, salmon, like it's full of mercury naturally. What are you going to do? Not eat fish? No, like just make better choices, right?
for
So
sure.
I'm big on talking to my clients about how do we make your body resilient enough to handle the environment that you live in.
What about birth control? Like IUDs and things like that?
Yeah, so that's such a difficult conversation. Do I support them? No.
In terms of heavy metals, I mean.
Yeah. So there's the copper IUDs.
I know. Are we getting into a different conversation?
No. So
we're not even going to talk about
that's a whole hormonal conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, this directly relates though. So copper IUDs, not a fan. I don't think any form of birth control is good at all, frankly. Any pharmaceutical, there's going to be xenoestrogens, chemical residues, and there's going to be heavy metals in them.
I had a client once say, is this what you mean about heavy metals, Ken? She goes, when I took the IUD out, the coating was gone.
Off of the IUD? Yeah.
So she goes, where'd it go?
It leaches into the body. Yeah, it's so bad.
I saw that, first time I saw that was probably, my son's 14, probably 15 years ago. I was working with someone and they kept getting like a taste in their mouth. Metallic taste. And I was like, and I saw she go, you on any IUDs? She's like, I'm on a copper IUD. And that's when I started diving into it. Because she has on anxiety meds and this. And I was like,
then it's copper and then zinc imbalance. And that's going to cause a whole causal chain. Yeah, man.
So birth control is an issue. That's another one that can leach that into your body.
For sure. And it's like one of like many. We can go as far as like what we're cooking with, like Teflon pans, I
was reading that the other day.
For the, what are they called? Air fryers. Full of Teflon. I'm like, oh my goodness.
I know all these people got their air fryers.
I love my air fryer. And so it's like you literally cannot avoid it all. You can't. At least I live that way. I'm not a purist in that sense because like, listen, I'm a human. Me and Erin, my wife, we speak about like the middle path.
Congratulations, but we will talk about that as well today.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a whole other freaking thing.
We talk about the middle path. Right? What is the middle path? I've, as you have, we have gone to both ends, I've gone to both sides, and the middle path is like the best place to be in the sense of like we are aware of what we put on our skin. Erin, all natural oils for her face. We're aware of what we cook with. But there's some places like I like an air fryer. I like my air fryer, and I know it's not the best for me because of the Teflon lining. And like there's the people make the silicone things that you put in there. I'm like, that can't be good either. Like, sometimes just I use my barbecue other days than not, So
sometimes I don't want to use my cast iron.
yeah,
So much shit to get done.
I know, my goodness, it's like, oh, and I gotta boil water to get it all off. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the game, right?
All right.
So where are they? They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Pretty much anything man-made. Like you live in a city, you breathe car exhaust. Like it's in the air.
Yeah.
Right. So you literally can't avoid it. But what I really want to discuss today is how and what can you do for your body and health to make sure that you're mitigating the amount of heavy metals and chemical residues that are coming into your body.
Yeah, because when coaches are dealing with clients, these are it's just seeing the signs and now looking when they're doing their intakes and saying, okay, if I see this, this, and this, this is a possibility of where they could be getting it from. It's understanding that. That's number one. And then, okay, well, how do I even talk to my client about it? Why is this such a big deal? Why shouldn't I be sucking up mercury into my system? Understanding that. That's our next point. Why is it so bad to be sucking up heavy metals our whole life?
Because they're just endocrine disruptors. So what they do
and for people that are like new to this, a new coach, what is an
so essentially anything endocrine based is hormonal based. Okay. And our bodies run off of a lot of things, but hormone signalers primarily, right? Like what makes a man, high testosterone. What makes a woman, high estrogen, right? So if you now have heavy metals playing hormone mimicry, meaning they are going into a spot where a hormone's supposed to bind to, but now the heavy metal is there, then those cells can't do what that hormone was supposed to be creating. So let's say, a male isn't having difficulty burning fat, building muscle, brain fog, anxiety. Let's say a woman's having like PMS issues, hormonal cystic ovaries, things like that. I start to look at like, okay, what's affecting the hormones, right? And very often if there's heavy metals binded to those sites, then they're not releasing the hormone that should be being released naturally. So that's why it needs to be cleaned up. We need to clean up these receptor sites so that the hormones can actually bind to that site and do the job that it should be creating.
And a lot of things that people will see then, or coaches are going to see with their clients, like whether it's skin issues, whether it's like inability to digest properly, cellulite, all
every condition you can think of is related to heavy metals.
So this is a very important part for all coaches to be thinking about.
Everybody
and understand.
Pretty much every person, every coach, every condition is related to viruses, heavy metals, chemical residues, and then all your microbes as a result of those things.
Right.
So you talked about like what will a coach see to suspect heavy metals? Any bug, you name the bug, any bug, they probably have heavy metals.
Like things like parasites, they like to really
parasites,
eat up heavy metals,
mold, candida, like it's their food source.
And then that means because sometimes I was reading that the concentration of heavy metals normally our body doesn't like high concentration of heavy metals, but those microbes can have them in a concentrated state in their body.
Yeah.
So then when you're going after one, which you're going to be talking about today, you have to go after the other because
it's the balance out effect. So naturally, I look at it from the perspective of if I have a client that's eating relatively well and exercising, why are they full of yeast, mold, or parasites? Right? Now, if we think about Mother Nature, does Mother Nature mess anything up? Usually not, right? I would argue never, right? But Mother Nature is pretty darn smart. We start to forget that we are part of Mother Nature, right? For example, when women are in cycle, they will menstruate based on the moon, right? That's like being in cycle with nature. We live in a society where we're so far removed from that, we forget that idea. So if someone is full of these microbes, I start to question, what is the body trying to do by attracting these microbes, right? What is the benefit of it in the body? Okay. Like, so if you have a carcass that's dead in the bush somewhere, what do you find in it? Bugs, natural cleanup crew. Now, this is strictly for the clients that are following a plan.
Right.
Because there are clients drinking, eating sugar, doing all the things that create a whole different environment.
That's right.
Right. So if your coaches are working with clients and they're following the things, I start to have that kind of conversation. Be like, okay, well, what else is going on? And very often it's a food source. It's a food source. Now there's totally energetics of this as well. And I don't know how far your coaches go into this, but from a chakra standpoint, when people are emotionally in the bottom 3 chakras, fear, shame,
seven,
and guilt.
right?
There's 7, correct?
That we will 7 main ones, and there's I forget 100 others.
I mean, you go into Hinduism, and there's hundreds,
Yeah.
but 7 main ones. And so if you focus on the bottom 3, call it like the bottom energies or the basement energies, which is fear, root, and then you have shame and guilt, and then you have self-worth in the gut. So when people are stuck in those bottom 3, often you will also find heavy metals and chemical residues because they tend to live in fight or flight, which means they don't detox as well. And then you also find the microbes that go along with it.
That makes sense. That was like,
and that's bioenergetic medicine in a nutshell.
That's something that I figured out myself going through root chakra stuff, fear, adrenals, kidneys.
Yeah.
They all showed up different ways. Kidney issues, this issues.
But they all link together.
That's right. Chasing yeast and fungus, but then removing heavy metals, getting rid of fear, getting my root chakra better. Then yeast fungus went out, stopped coming back.
Yeah.
So I remember Bart asked me, why the hell do you got to do so many yeast cleanses? I'm like, I don't know. I shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
But that's because they were there for another reason.
Totally.
They're my cleanup crew for the metals and then other things.
Right. So if you're like yeast fungal issues and you go after heavy metals and chemical residues, but you don't work with that emotional pattern, you won't actually truly clean those two up.
It's all of them happen.
It's all of them. So a model that I work with called the downward causation model, if you think about it as a waterfall effect, going bottom up, you have physical, emotional, mental, and then spiritual, right? So when people are only focused on the physical and not necessarily seeing the progress, you start to like kind of go up.
Yeah.
And that's been our journey really in the last, call it like 10 years, like more the second half of those 10 years, starting to realize those pieces and working with clients like this, right? So essentially, you know, they're hormone disruptors. They collect in body fat. Okay, so a lot of clients who have stubborn body fat, they won't be able to burn that fat because the body's trying to protect them because it can't actually detox what's in the fat.
So fat has a higher job. It becomes a job higher than fuel. It's like, okay, let's keep these things.
It's protecting all your organs from those toxins, essentially, right? It's like a protective mechanism.
Right.
And that is another problem because the more fat you have, the more it messes with your hormones, such as raising your estrogen levels, right? Which lowers your testosterone, which then plays with your mental health, especially if you're a male.
So wait. So then like, and you and I know this, but I'm going to play like, you know, I'm going to play stupid here and just say, so what if I do double cardio, I drop my calories, you know, and I take a really good pre-workout.
You're going to have adrenal fatigue in about 60 days.
So you're hearing that out there. Coaches out there, they're saying, clients stuck, they're not dropping body fat. Let me push the body harder. Not a great thing.
It's only going to push back harder. And it's going to push back so hard, you're going to be in bed.
That's right.
Or sicker. Essentially. Those are your two options.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, people can't detox or heal with burnt adrenals. So how is that going to work? Right now, I get it. I was an athlete. Like I was a competitor. Like there is a time and a place. I understand it. But if you're Gen Pop, there is no business doing that at all. I remember when I was working with clients, like we did the least amount of cardio possible.
Yeah.
Like absolutely. The least amount. You know, people are like, oh, you don't have your person doing faster cardio. I'm like, no, they do 3 HIIT sessions a week. And like, I remember we were doing cardio like for a show until 3 weeks out from a show. Like there was no way I was going to try to rev up my engine anytime before that. Because you're trying to get your metabolism as stoked as you can without all that excess cardio.
But even I think competitors, not that we're going to get off on that topic, but even competitors though, like I think a lot of times getting great results of them is using these things in there. So there's systems like I've used it with competitors over the last 2 decades, some parts of this, and I've always been able to get great results. Even my wife, when I first met her, we were competing, how come she's not constipated? How come she's eating real food backstage? How come she doesn't have a blow up after? All these things from getting rid of like cellulite, being able to do that.
Yeah.
It's just showing the body a better way to heal. So you don't have to push it harder. It exists better. It functions better, right?
I've had female clients like bleeding on stage, like menstruation. Like that's how good their hormones are. And you know, some like that's like a rare thing, right? And so
it doesn't mean like physically on the floor.
No. Like menstruation, which is like female hormones competing goes out the window.
Yeah.
How many women's hormones are out the window to begin with, let alone doing that? And the reason for that is because in the off season, it was 6 months of like nutrition, detox pathways, getting the body as healthy as
when you push it, when you rev it, it works.
So that when you need it to stress it, it can respond, right? And so outside of fatty tissues, organs, fatty organs, okay? What's a fatty organ? Your brain, your thyroid, not that the liver is fatty, but your liver collects a lot of that.
Yeah.
Kidneys and large intestine.
And truth be told, me having kidney challenges, that we've talked about that many times, but then working on heavy metals and obviously working on emotional, doing Canva with my boy Bharat, doing other stuff and releasing that stuff. Now I see my kidney function going up slowly. Took time, but those are all the places where it gets like it hits, right?
Totally. So, it's like all your detox organs get hit the hardest, right? And there's factors into why those organs get hit that I think we're going to get into now in terms of like steps. But my main perspective on this is like all of those things that I mentioned, all the endotoxins, all the exotoxins are all the things that coaches need to be aware of. And if they don't know how to do it, then, just refer out, right? But you have to have that in mind when you're working with your clients. Otherwise, you're gonna try to keep pushing their body. We need to remember as coaches that the body has an innate ability to heal. The body wants to heal. It is its sole job, is like keeping you alive, right? And our decisions that we make on a daily basis are what make us sick, so to speak. So my main job is removing obstacles to cure. A big obstacle for a lot of people is the heavy metals that have leached in their body over the years.
So then if people are doing, like I said, let's get down into then how we are starting to pull those heavy metals, because obviously if you look at, how they relate to parasites, and parasites can cause a lot of dysfunction. We're chasing the parasites over there, but they're chewing on the heavy metals.
So that's the interesting part, okay? So the naturopathic community, the functional medicine community, what do they say? Parasites. I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day. I'm like, I don't know if I fully agree with that. Like my order of operations is basically RCCP, which stands for restoring cellular communication pathways. Okay. Many people, they're not really sleeping all that well. They're not pooping all that well. They're not absorbing water all that well. They're not digesting their food all that well. We know a lot of people have leaky gut. So like, until you fix that, the person doesn't even have the capacity to heal. Right? So that's order operation number one. I'm not even concerned about heavy metals until I get all those things working.
You don't want to jump in. Let me just start.
Can heavy metals be a factor? For sure, and all of that, but like it's not the only cause. Usually a lot of that is lifestyle related stuff. Get you drinking some better water, like get a Santivia, for example. Get off the tap water.
Get a Kangen.
Get a Kangen. Yeah, there we go. I mean, I have one. I have 3 actually.
You're the one that got me to Kangen. My son was drinking your water out of
I remember.
And then he's like, Dad, I feel amazing when I'm training. I feel amazing in my soccer. My legs aren't tired. I'm not bloated. I can go back on shifts fast. And I'm like, wow, my son is raving about water. So I'm just getting this water.
Gosh.
I'm like, everyone filling up these like 8-liter bags of water. And then my daughter's like, I think my skin's better. My hair's better with this water. I was like, I wanted to get this water for me, but if your kids, right? If you guys want it, we get it.
Easy sell there.
You turned me on to that.
So I mean, simple as that. Water, right? Water, food. Like, what are we cooking in? What are we putting our food in? Like, are we putting in? I know we're talking about heavy metals and not plastics, but like hot food and plastics, microwaves and plastics. Like these are all endocrine disruptors that can affect all those things. So RCCP is where we start. Restoring cellular communication pathways. That's like the foundation. If a person doesn't have the capacity to heal, you can't address anything. Something I don't like about the naturopathic community in relation to heavy metals is they often will sometimes jump to like, oh, you need heavy metal chelation therapy. But they have not fixed your gut yet.
I have seen that quite a bit. All my naturopaths out there, love you. But I have seen that a lot where they just jump to something and the support isn't there.
They do testing. They're like, oh, you have heavy metals. And it's like, you're not even pooping properly yet, or like you still have leaky gut,
or you're still having like inflammatory foods like daily,
daily. Like why are you paying like $3,000 for heavy metal chelation when we should like just be fixing the system that should actually be doing it naturally for you? Called your gut.
That's right.
Called the microbiome, right? The like billions of bacteria living in your gut that naturally should be dealing with the toxic load in your life. Right? Assuming it's like at a decent level. So that's where we start. RCCP, fix the gut, fix the bowels, right? Make sure that this stuff can actually get out of the body.
And then to start, once you've done the basics, you've got the body in a place where you can support that. What comes next? What are kind of the steps?
Methylation.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Methylation. So methylation is a cellular process at the liver and the kidneys that helps oxidize fat, create energy, and detox heavy metals. So if people aren't methylating, it has a genetic factor, and it's very common actually in West Indian communities, because it's just a trend that I see. But everyone could have a methylation issue, and so you have to make sure they're methylating, right? If they're not methylating, they're not going to detox heavy metals.
Remember the methylation test we used to do? When it was the asparagus test.
Yeah, the asparagus test, right?
That's a great test.
That was like that's the free test, right? But like it's telltale, and so if they're not methylating, they're going to have heavy metals in most of the organs that we talked about, to be honest. And so then how do you solve that? Well, you need a methylated B vitamin, right? They need to be taking methylated B vitamin, and the asparagus test, for example, should not smell the way that it smells if your methylation pathways are
and everyone thinks that's normal. That is the 60-40% gene population that you're going to see, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I was doing your methyl B, which is probably the best methyl B by Physica, right?
Yeah,
probably the best methylator out there.
Yeah.
And then I got on
raw liver.
That was like, honestly, then remember my system just started cleaning. My kidneys started getting better. My liver started getting, my skin started improving. And I go, Jay, what's going on? He goes, I think it's the methylation. There. But then, because remember I was taking the Physica and I was doing that, my B levels went
skyrocketed.
Yeah, skyrocketed. So anyway,
you don't need both.
I didn't. You're like, I don't need both. I think you need to back up.
Yeah. What are the other?
Methylation is
But I would
key.
Pick liver any day. Oh. Like any day for a plethora of reasons.
We're gonna have you back on. We're gonna eat raw organ meat, but that's
okay, perfect. Yeah, so our CCP got methylation pathways. Once that's working, my next step, like I'm literally giving you my step by step. My next step is chemical residues and heavy metals.
Okay,
that's my next step. Now, what am I gonna do? I'm not a naturopath. I can't do chelation therapy. I don't do anything like that. So we put binders in there. We put binders in there that specifically bind up chemical residues and heavy metals that are on the surface.
Okay, right? Like give us examples like
Metachlor. Okay. So which chlorophyll.
Yep.
Things like cilantro.
Yeah. You like chlorella? I know you like chlorella.
I like chlorella. I like there's a brown algae extract that we use with Physica. Zeolite. What's the one fossilized bone? There's another binder.
But there's a bunch.
There's a bunch of binders. There's a bunch of different binders out there, and all they do is collect things. I mean, you can go as far as like collagen, bone broth.
So people do like bentonite clay.
Bentonite clay? Yeah.
Activated charcoal, maybe?
I don't know if I'm sold on activated charcoal.
Okay.
I to be honest, I've never used activated charcoal with my clients. It just doesn't resonate with me, to be completely frank. There's health food store companies, like stuff you find in health food stores, and then there's like medical grade stuff. And in the medical grade community, we never use activated charcoal, so it just makes me think
use more bentonite clay.
We don't even use bentonite clay. It's really like the chlorophyll, the chlorella, the cilantro.
I've used all of them.
The zeolite.
I've used all. I've used those.
Brown algae extract.
I've used both. I've
just personally never used it.
Yeah.
That's all. So that's what I would do first. Bind up everything on the surface.
Okay.
And with my form of testing, we can see that when we just start binding up what's on the surface, and that could be 30 days, 60 days, they start to test better.
Right. Now, people don't have testing or access to your testing, and I know they can do it anywhere in the world.
They would start to feel better.
Okay.
Right? They would start to feel better. The hair samples, like they really wanted to get tested.
That's the best way for heavy metals outside of what you're doing, right?
Outside of what I'm doing, yeah. Heavy metals or hair would be the best. Now, the idea, like, does somebody need testing? If you have symptomology, you can probably assume that you got heavy metals and chemical residues.
Because even with parasite stuff, as we talked about, there isn't a great parasite test that you're going to get from your medical doctor. They're going to probably test the top 9. But your symptomology is massive.
So the reason that I like to go after heavy metals, chemical residues first is like, as we kind of got into that, the naturopathic community loves to fight parasites, right? They want to go after parasites because like if you kill the parasites, you're killing their weight in like toxins and whatever else. And I get that. But most people, when they run parasite protocols, it's not like fun. And they don't feel great.
No, they don't.
They don't. So what I do, like if we picture parasites and bugs as like a pack of lions, okay, am I going to try and kill the lions, or am I just going to get rid of their food?
Good point.
I'm just going to get rid of their food source. And like I have people pass parasites all the time, and we're not killing parasites. They're just passing because we're getting rid of the food source and we're changing the bioterrain.
The environment, so they don't want to live there anymore. They don't want to be there.
Yeah, we're cleaning up the environment. So they end up start dying and they're passing, right? And we're making all these other changes in their life as well, right? So naturally it starts to shift.
That makes sense because you know what? There was a time I know when we were going and trying to kill things. And then I started learning that they just they fight harder.
Yeah.
So when you change the environment by how you eat, how you sleep, the water, all that stuff, and then the heavy metals was the last part that kind of came in my brain.
Yeah.
And it made it easier. They live in an environment almost like crime doesn't want to be in a gated community, unless it's high level crime. But
it's a different conversation.
But like crime doesn't want to be in a gated community. But if you're in somewhere that's not, crime is rampant. It'll stay.
There was when I studied live blood cell analysis, and in everybody's blood there's these little white specks that are like ancient, and they don't really know what it is. They call them symptotids, and what would happen is as the pH of the blood changed, and remember pH of blood is like micro changes, that symptotid would turn into like a bacterial rod or a fungal rod or turn into a parasite. So we get into this idea of like catching things.
Right.
From that perspective, you don't catch anything.
It's there.
The environment, it's there. It just, the environment changes and it morphs based off of that environment. And I agree with that completely because I've seen it time and time again.
For sure.
So from that, the idea of like trying to kill a parasite infection, it's like you are a host because you've created an environment for a parasite infection.
And then they grow their cartel family.
And then it just keeps going.
Right.
So the first step, bind up what's on the surface. The second step, so naturopath would use like chelation therapy.
Right.
I use homeopathics.
Okay.
That's personally my go-to. I find that they do the same thing. I use my homeopathics, and the homeopathics like chem tox and metal tox will go into the body and, through the concept of homeopathy, start to pull things out of the tissue while continuing to bind things up. Right. I find that once the heavy metals and chemical residues are cleaned up, assuming someone's not on pharmaceuticals or like continuing to live like tradesmen, those poor men, like they're like auto mechanics. They're just full of chemicals all day, every day, absorbing it through their skin, breathing it all day. Like
my neighbor's a mechanic. You hear me, bro.
The amount of autoimmune conditions with trade workers nowadays because of that. Women in like salons and hairdressers, right? Like that's all that it is. They're all endocrine disruptors, and of course they're going to create autoimmune conditions naturally. So those would be the steps, right? Okay. And assuming they're not in those environments, they're going to be doing much better. And then you start going after bugs. Right now, if you don't do that long term, that's when you start to get some pretty serious conditions.
And like you had a couple that you said, and I was like, those are ones I don't think people link together. So I want you to talk just briefly, just say bang, 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 because I think people are listening going,
something we didn't talk about. So in relation to our long-term conditions, things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, any sort of like really chronic, scary condition.
Those are all neurological.
They're all neurological. Now, where do people, so I'm sure we know people in their like 50s to like 80s nowadays that are suffering from those conditions. Let's go back 50 to 80 years ago. What did they put in fillings?
Right.
Mercury. Yeah. How many of you got parents or grandparents with a mouthful of mercury?
Or me. I had mercury.
Right.
I think I still do.
Right. And like, there are dentists that say mercury is bad, and there are dentists that say mercury is fine. There are dentists that say as long as your fillings aren't cracked, it's fine. The Board of Biological Dentistry will take a tooth with a mercury filling in it and rub it with a pencil eraser at body temperature, and you can see it off-gassing.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Even if you drink something like a really hot or high boiling liquid, that's going to change. Mercury has a different kind of point with boiling than other things.
Exactly. So. And it's leaching into your system. It goes into your gut, goes into your kidneys, this is constant bereavement of your body. Okay, off-gassing. What's right above your mouth? Your brain, right? What's right below your mouth? Your thyroid. How many women got thyroid issues or cancer? And we know all the stuff, lymph is your next podcast, all the lymphatic system from the jaw, where does it drain through? All the way into your armpits. Yeah. Women, breast cancer. Yeah. Why do they get breast cancer? Underwire bras. It just holds everything right there. Right. So that's the game. So many of my older clients, I'm like, I need you to see a holistic dentist. I need you to get the mercury out of your mouth. Like I can't really get you better until that stuff is out of your mouth. And so heavy metals have an affinity for the fatty tissue and nerve tissue. Right. And that's why you see it in these chronic conditions.
All right. So now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of this isn't just like a cool thing to do because the latest trend is to work on heavy metals. This is serious shit that's been a long time coming.
A long time coming, old form of medicine. And I really just want to bring up like heavy metals is like honestly a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, like we could do like a 6-part series on like all the things that we look for when I look for when I'm working with clients. But heavy metals is like one of the big ones. Chemical residues, another big one. And like we can, like, it's no different. The whole conversation we had today, if we just changed it to chemical residues and xenoestrogens, it's the same thing.
So even benefits then, like, so now coach is saying, okay, got it, guys. I got to work on this heavy metal stuff. I got to do basic life things to get their body functioning, working properly. I got to work on draining the system. So
and then put some binders in there.
Put some binders in to get rid of things. Reduce load, right?
Yeah,
so
changing like what you're cooking with, what are you putting on your skin. Women are definitely way worse for this because of like the whole personal product side of things.
Metrosexuality in the last 15 years has changed that.
Valid.
Men have started doing like, I got beard oil, hair oil, this oil.
True. There's apps, like I like Yuka personally because it's free. But it's just
Ingrid. What do you think of Ingrid?
Ingrid's a good app too. Yeah.
Right?
You just scan them and it tells you. I was using Burt's Bees body lotion for the longest time. I was like, oh, baby Burt's Bees lotion, like it's got to be clean and like smells nice and whatever. I look like sunflower oil. I'm like, come on. Seed oils? Yeah. Really?
When my son was...
I was so disappointed.
When my son was 5 months old, I remember him being in a room, looking at a vino, and then just learning about that, because I was around Paul Oakentine, turning the ball around and going, gosh, this is going to rob his testosterone from 5 months old. I was like, holy shit. I was like, threw out all the stuff. My wife came home, she was pissed. I'm like, dear. She goes, but Savino. I go, I don't care.
Put pork fat on him. Just rub him in beef tallow. That's all he needs.
I was like, thank God. I told my son that. He goes, so I'm okay. I'm like, you're okay.
Yeah,
you're good.
You got the test. You're still good.
You're okay.
Yeah, so, but like that is the bereavement on test. I mean, that's a whole hormonal conversation we can have, like the decrease of male testosterone and all the things. But you know, it's one and the same, right? And so, you know, in terms of like anybody out there who's never focused on heavy metals, like don't just jump to that. Fix the basics. Okay. Right? Because any binders you put in there are not only working on heavy metals, they're working on chemical residues and they're shifting the bioterrain. We need to look at this from not just like heavy metals, chemical residues, parasites. We need to look at the bioterrain. The bioterrain is the biological terrain of our environment. You know, the bioterrain, the terrain of Toronto is very different than the terrain of Salmon Arm, for example.
Yeah.
You know, not only from a topography standpoint, but also like demographic standpoint in terms of who lives there. Well, the body is no different. You know, and so everything from like how we think to what we put in our body, what we put on our skin, how we sleep, like all those things factor into our bioterrain. So to think that you can change none of that and just go do this and just magically set yourself up for the rest of your life is not going to work.
That also creates a pretty bad war. I find when people have wars when they go after microbes is because they haven't changed the environment. They haven't met the friendlies. They haven't done anything. They haven't, you know, put up any support systems. They don't have a way out for all that stuff.
My clients go from like being sick to just getting better. And I remember in the past being like, you know, you got to go through the parasite protocol and like it's going to be rough and like you just, you know, that whole conversation and like I don't do that anymore. Clients don't experience that. Like, is it completely linear? No, not quite. But like I don't have clients having the herxes they had in the past. They shouldn't.
I remember diap symptoms were just a thing. I used to say, well, you're going to get pretty much whatever you get based on how your body can process stuff. And then I say, well, if they have slow bowels, maybe it'll back up toxin. And then I started realizing if you're drained and do everything properly, you'll have less and less of that.
Totally.
You know, and if your body's in the right place, you're not going to have all this, you know.
Exactly. Stuff, right? And so, and the sad part, what we could say sad, the sad part is that most people feel like crap because the basics aren't even working.
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, because most of my clients, 3-4 months in, you get all the basics working, they feel great. The only issue that I see with that is feeling great and dealing with all the reasons why you got sick are not the same.
Yeah, they're different. That's a whole nother.
They're very different. That's a whole nother conversation. So I like that first quarter, that first 4 months where it's like, let's work on all the basics. Let's get your life into a place of like you feel good and things are working properly. And then we can work for the next 4 months on how all of that happened. Right.
And then things people are going to see. So coach out there saying, what am I going to see then? Great. I do all this stupid crap you guys just said.
All the things
I got to do all this stuff that makes me nervous. What are my clients going to see? They're going to get fat loss because, you know, if stuff isn't stuck in fat cells,
every symptom that they are witnessing, whether it's fat loss, skin issues, brain fog, like whatever it is, they're going to start to improve. They're going to start to improve. I've worked with 1,600 people in the last 5 years. When you work on these endo and exotoxins, their symptomology improves. Like that,
there you go. You heard it. So everything gets better. A lot of the things that we're chasing as coaches will improve if you do some basic things like 100%. This.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier. It makes it easier to get there.
It makes it way easier to get there because you're not like, oh my God, what am I doing? This client, like, you're not playing that back and forth game. It's just like, let's follow the order of operations, right? When you follow that order of operations, it gets easier. And depending on the tools at your disposal, maybe using activated charcoal, you might be being like, okay, I need you on this for like 90 days because like the tools are just not like per se medical grade, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's just a slower process.
Yeah.
Right. But like, it doesn't matter if it's 60 days or 30 days. The biggest part is like, have we identified where it's coming into the body? In the lifestyle, in the lotions, in the food, cooking, utensil, like all those things. Right. Where is it coming from? Mouth. Older demographic, like mouth. Everybody. Now, I would say from like 35, if your client is 35 and younger, you probably don't really have to worry about it. But if they're 35 and older, you have to have a mercury conversation. And just because they've had them all out doesn't mean it's out of their body.
Yeah. Mercury is still.
It's a very,
right? Very mercury and copper and mine, right?
Yeah.
Which that's cool.
Right. And so that's, I know. How would you test with your hair? No, I'm kidding.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I see it in everybody. Very rarely do I not see heavy metals. And I would say it's probably like 10% of clients, Every client comes in, I assess all of it and like they have most of it. Yeah. That's why they're in my office particularly, right? But most people who have a hormone issue or fat loss issues, they probably have a methylation issue, which means they probably have a heavy metal issue.
So then if people, like I said, coach out there, we got all the steps now. We got how to identify, where to look, what the steps to do.
Good.
Let's say people want to find you particularly and work with you. You're still working with people on a one-on-one basis?
Where
do they find you?
Still working with people one-on-one basis. Website is excitolife.ca. I changed my Instagram to the Bioenergetic Medicine Coach, only to like set me apart from other people and specialize in like what I do. And as you hear in my conversation, like I don't focus on one condition. I don't focus on like one thing. I'm not the parasite guy. I'm not the heavy metal guy.
You can't call you that. No. So I shouldn't put on the show notes the parasite guy.
Yeah, no, that's not me. You can call me the bioenergetic medicine guy. I like that. I like bioenergetic medicine because in order for me to completely turn my health around from 23 depressed, terrible IBS issues to like, I just got married last weekend, basically. I got a baby due next month. Just opened a 2,400 square foot clinic in BC. Like that transition was largely in part due to like the idea of bioenergetics and like much more outside the physical body of like biology, but also the energetic body and entangling that in together. So, there's clients out there that are working with coaches that are just very like physical gym based. And like every conversation I have with a client brings in emotions in the subconscious mind. Cause like, that's why they're sick.
Yeah. And you know what? I always say this, we are our clients.
Yes.
So the clients that come to us are a version or reflection
mirrors.
Of some pieces of who we are. So if that's something that you've gone through, you've healed through, you'll be able to help all those people coming down the line who have those things, which is what 99% of people walking in anyone's door, right?
It's a lot of people, right? So that's who I like to work with. I work primarily with the people who are stuck, and by meaning stuck, they've like tried the trainers, they've tried the naturopaths, they've tried the doctors, like they've tried the things, and they end up at my office, and that's what makes a successful relationship generally, because they've tried the things and they've become open to a different way. Very different than someone who's just a referral and hasn't tried anything, and like all of a sudden I'm talking about like mumbo jumbo. I'm talking about chakras and energies and emotions and like
and heavy metals
heavy metals and parasites. Like it doesn't quite resonate.
They're like,
what
about my caloric deficit?
Can't you just give me a pill for my cholesterol and send me home? Can't you
just carb deplete?
Yeah, you just more cardio. Like I just want this belly fat, and I'm like, you're holding on to too many emotions.
And they're like, I'm out of here.
Leave me. I'm gonna go back and do my cardio and take my pre-workout. And like I've had that too.
Yeah.
I've had that too, you know?
So you're out in BC. So if
Yeah.
someone wants to see you online, is that an option too?
It is. We can do all testing virtually with some hair, actually.
That's right.
And I could test way more than just heavy metals. So whether it's in person or virtual.
They just sent it to you, because I remember one of our coaches, Kaylee, she sent you some hair from Barbados.
She was actually living in Barbados.
Yeah.
We did a food sensitivity test with her.
Yeah.
And she sent me some hair, and we did a food sensitivity test on her. And she's like, wow. You know, she like, the results were exactly accurate, which I mean, I know that.
Yeah.
But people like sometimes struggle with the idea of like, oh, you got all of that just through my hair.
Yeah.
So yeah, distance doesn't matter.
So they can do online, they can do in person.
Yeah.
You do some cool stuff too. Before we kind of wrap, you do, like I said, I know you and the wifey, you guys are, I guess, developing some retreat. People come in, they can do some
so
stuff,
the clinic I built, I've designed it to be a clinic for local seminar. People can come in and get what they need. But I've also designed it in a way to be like a healing retreat center. So with all the biohacking tools I have, plus my bioenergetic medicine, plus the idea of plant medicines, that's where we're building retreats. So people come in on like a Friday night, we have a sweat lodge. Saturday is medicine day, Sananga, Kambo in the morning, integration, then psilocybin ceremony at night. Sunday is bioenergetic, because now your field is clear. I can test you and get some pretty like clear results. So that's like live blood cell, bioenergetic medicine, EAV, nervous system analysis with the brain tap HRV.
What's the one that you see when it's in your nose?
Oh, so that isn't an assessment. That is called the Vielight, and that is cranial biophotomodulation. So that's red light therapy for the brain, which is actually really good for like Alzheimer's, dementia. Like, so we have red light for our body. What about red light for the brain, right? So with my dad's injury, when he fell and like had the 2 brain hemorrhages, I went on a rabbit hole of like, how do we help heal the brain? And this was one of the technologies. And so the biohackers use it because it also can pulse alpha or gamma waves. And again, frequency medicine. So imagine having red light therapy plus frequencies for the brain. So lo and behold, on the Sundays, we do all assessments. And then I also do my neurosomatic assessment, right? The biomechanical postural assessment. And I do
spiritual, physical, emotional.
All of it. And then the Sunday and Monday is integration with like hot, cold movement, breath work, yoga. I'm working on getting a hyperbaric chamber that I really want in there, and massage, because I have some massage therapists. And then I'm just working on getting hydrofacial machine. So it's kind of like all in health and wellness put together to like move the needle and then integrate. You know, so that's basically what I'm really trying to put together out in BC and create like a healing clinic.
Do you guys have and I guess it's your wife, is she going to do the integration from like even the plant medicine stuff after? Because I know having done it.
Yeah, so the integration definitely happens in the days afterwards, and then we do follow-up calls every probably like 2 weeks.
Because that's a lot. They come out of there like...
Most of the clients who come into retreats we're already working with. So like generally, you know, I'll be working with them, or Aaron will be working with them with a weekly coaching basis to already set up that foundation. They're like ready to go.
They're like raw,
we will not bring in people to just like come to a retreat. Like work with us, set the foundation. That's good. And then let's move the needle and then integrate afterwards. That's great. That's the way we like to do it.
I found the integration with plant medicine, all that stuff. It's the after. Is the big part. It's coming back into life. And bringing it back into this world, can be.
We really like working with them prior, because it makes it really clear where the block is. Right, some blocks can be moved quite easily with the right coaching. Some blocks are way more sticky, and so when you know exactly where that block is, and then you bring in the plant medicine ceremony, you blast that out of the way, and then you can continue to work afterwards. Meanwhile, sometimes I feel people jump to plant medicines too quickly, just like people jumping to like performance enhancers too early, instead of like putting in the time per se to like really become familiar with that terrain. So we do a lot of cool things, and that's why the bioenergetic medicine side is like where I really resonate with, because I tie all the worlds in together. I can't separate them.
Is that the new excitement for you before we kind of wrap? Is that like the retreat stuff? Is that going to be the new kind of, because you know, knowing you all the time I've known you are, I picture you as like almost like not Street Fighter, but like, you know, Ken and Ryo, for those of you who know what Street Fighter is from back in the day, it's like going to different parts of the world, learning things, and always on a different path coming back with new tools. And every time I see, if I don't see it for 3 months,
Yeah,
which I always
I'm
see
doing
it.
something else.
Yeah, there's something else, something new. Not like a completely. It's not like you're playing with horses and you're playing with donkeys. And it's just like you just bring new tools in.
Yeah.
And
So
is that the new thing for you?
So becoming a dad, right? To be very honest, I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, and my next step is looking at more financial security and like streamlined income, so to speak. And how can I help more people? So the next step is either opening another location of Éxito Life in Kelowna, being closer to a bigger city, or you may have remembered this. I've always tried to get to the States.
Yeah,
like, that's always been a dream of mine. So a dream is either Kelowna, using an E2 visa to get stateside with another Éxito, like similar building style. That's the next step. The next step is either opening another location, Kelowna, doing that in the States, or going the franchise route and opening a more public franchise that's very similar to what I'm doing, but stateside. And they've actually let me practice the bioenergetic medicine aspect out of there. And so from like a dad, we can use the word safety to a degree, or like, it's like I could sell this in 5 to 10 years if I wanted to, versus like, when would I ever sell Éxito? Like, when would you ever sell Bioenergetic? Like, you would never do it, right? So from like more of an investor standpoint, which is where my brain is starting to go now, outside of the self-employed side of things. And it's just about how can I help more people? And it's difficult to do that with all the testing and one-on-one work. And so creating a center where I can like have people come and stay and integrate all these technologies is really how I feel I can have the most impact. For a lot of people, you need to create a sense of feeling what love is. That's how you get people better. Some people who come from like, broken marriages or households or just all the trauma they've experienced, they don't even know what love feels like.
Well, love is for them it may be different than someone else's too.
Totally.
The version of love.
How do you raise that like emotion or frequency, right? We kind of talked about that with the fear, shame, and guilt, separate. How do you move that up? And so the retreat aspect, or coming for a week, is how we can as a community locally there shift someone's frequency to feel what it feels like to be like, this is where you heal.
And this is how you live. What I like about retreats is this is how you live.
Yeah, that's just how we go about our day.
Yeah, so it's not like you're doing anything any different than what you're
doing. No. Like, people are like, this is how you live. Like, yeah, we live in a vortex, man.
Right.
Like, this is how we operate.
All right, man. Well, it's been good. I know we could chat forever. And I will definitely have you on again. Okay. This is an amazing episode. So I appreciate you giving us as much out of your brain.
Oh my gosh, I could talk for hours about
I know
that,
you can. Next time we're gonna have a podcast, just sit and rap, talk.
Cool.
So anyway, we can find him at the Bioenergetic Medicine Coach on Instagram. Éxitolights.ca.
Yeah, Éxitolights.ca.
Jason Persaud, awesome. A pleasure to have you on. For those of you listening, also our transformation mentorship, which is how we teach students how to do holistic transformations using our stress reduced fat loss system, is coming up March 27th. That's our next cohort. So if you're interested in that, visit our website, transformationmentorship.ca, for more information. Until next time, see you again.